The Art of Learning, An Inner Journey to Optimal Performance, by Josh Waitzkin. Introduction. Picture this. It's December 5, 2004. Chuan Stadium in Taipei, Taiwan. The air is thick with tension, buzzing with chants in a language you don't understand. You're lying on your back, every part of your body screaming in pain. Your shoulder feels like it's been torn from its socket. The bell rings. You have 40 seconds. Your teammates are kneeling over you, their faces etched with worry. In the stands, you can hear your dad's voice cutting through the noise. "Come on, Josh. Gotta get up." Across the ring, your opponent is a monster. They call him Buffalo. He's bigger than you, stronger, and he's pounding his chest, roaring for his home crowd. He's the hometown hero, a national champion groomed for this moment his entire life. You are the foreigner, the intruder. The final bell for the round rings. You have to get up. You have to make it to the center of that ring. If you can just touch wrists with him one more time, you have a chance. You dig deep, pulling strength from a place you didn't know existed. Our wrists touch. The bell rings for the final round of the Tai Chi Chuan Push Hands World Championship. And he hits you like a Mack truck. How does a person get here? More importantly, how does a person win from here? And what's truly strange is that this man, Josh Waitzkin, wasn't supposed to be here at all. Just a few years earlier, he was known to the world for something completely different. He was the gentle-faced chess prodigy, the subject of the book and the blockbuster movie, Searching for Bobby Fischer. He was America's great hope for a chess world champion, a genius of the mind. So what was he doing in a martial arts ring, with a dislocated shoulder, fighting for a world title in a brutal physical art? The answer to that question is the secret this book holds. It's a secret that has nothing to do with chess or martial arts, but everything to do with excellence. The Art of Learning isn't just a story, it's a roadmap. It reveals a set of principles that allowed one person to reach the absolute pinnacle of two wildly different fields. And here's the promise I can make you. By the end of our time together, you will understand this roadmap. You will see that the path to becoming great at anything, whether it's math, music, sports, or business, is not a mystery. It is a process. It is an art. And it's an art that you can learn. Book summary. Our story begins not in a stadium in Taiwan, but in a gritty, chaotic corner of New York City, Washington Square Park. A 6-year-old Josh Waitzkin is walking with his mom when he sees them, the chess hustlers. These weren't grandmasters in quiet halls, they were brilliant, broken men playing speed chess for dollars on stone tables. Alcoholics, homeless geniuses, gamblers, all of them aflame with a passion for the game. To young Josh, the pieces on the board weren't just wood, they were animals in a mysterious forest, filled with a dangerous and magical energy. He was captivated. Something about the game just made sense. A few days later, he challenged one of the old-timers to a game. He didn't really know the rules, but as he moved the pieces, it felt like he was remembering something he'd lost. He played so well that the old man accused his mother of hustling him. From that day on, the park became his school. This is the first critical lesson from Josh's journey. His education didn't begin with rigid rules and boring theory. It began with love. He loved the thrill of battle, the mental grenades flying back and forth. He was a protege of the street, learning to be tough, feisty, and hard to rattle. Soon, a famous chess teacher named Bruce Pandolfini discovered him and offered to give him lessons. But Bruce was wise. He knew he couldn't just force-feed information to this willful, creative kid. Many teachers try to fit their students into a cookie-cutter mold, but Bruce understood that this approach is profoundly destructive. He had to nurture Josh's natural love for the game, not smother it with technical jargon. So how did he do it? This brings us to a foundational idea in the art of learning: depth over breadth. Instead of starting with complex opening moves, which is what most beginners do, Bruce started Josh with a nearly empty board. King and pawn versus king? Just 3 pieces. They spent hundreds of hours on these simple endgames, exploring the very soul of each piece. Josh learned about empty space, timing, and pressure in a clear, uncluttered environment. He was learning the fundamental principles from the foundation up. Most of his rivals, on the other hand, were memorizing opening traps. This is like stealing the test answers instead of learning how to do the math. It might get you a quick win, but you don't learn anything about the why. For these kids, chess became about one thing: results. Winning fast. This reveals a profound psychological split in how people approach learning. Drive. Carol Dweck, a Stanford psychologist, calls it the difference between an entity theory of intelligence and an incremental theory of intelligence. An entity theorist believes their ability is fixed. They say things like, "I'm smart at this," or "I'm just not a math person." When they succeed, they think it's because of their innate talent. When they fail, they think it's because they're dumb. These are the kids who, when faced with a hard problem, get discouraged and give up. Their confidence is brittle. An incremental theorist, or a learning theorist, believes that ability can be built, step by step. They say things like, "I got it because I worked hard," or "I should have tried harder." For them, a challenge isn't a threat, it's an opportunity. They have a mastery-oriented response. They're resilient. The kids who memorize openings are being trained as entity theorists. They link their identity to winning. So what happens when they lose? Their whole world collapses. Josh, by learning from the endgame up, was being trained as an incrementalist. He was focused on the process, on understanding, on the journey. This is why, in his first national championship, at 8 years old, he found himself in the final round against a brilliant boy named David Arnett. Josh made a mistake early on and fell into a trap. He was losing badly. He felt the sweat, the goosebumps, the hunger and the stares of his rivals. He felt everything falling apart. And he lost. He was devastated. Was he a loser? Had he let everyone down? An 8-year-old isn't prepared for these questions. But his family knew what to do. They didn't analyze the game. They didn't tell him it was okay. They went fishing. The ocean was Josh's place of renewal. It was a break from the intensity, a way to put things back in perspective. He rediscovered himself as a child, not as a chess player. This taught him another vital lesson: the road to success is not a straight line. It requires periods of rest, reflection, and recovery. In the long run, a painful loss can be far more valuable than an easy win. Those who can draw wisdom from every experience, good or bad, are the ones who make it down the road. He returned to chess with a new fire. He had tasted his own mortality as a player, and he responded not with fear, but with hard work. He was no longer just a talented kid having fun, he was on a mission. This led him to his next great rival, a terrifyingly intense child named Jeff Sarwar, who studied chess 12 hours a day and would chant "kill, kill, kill" under his breath during games. Their matchup in the final round of the next national championship was war. Josh was down a pawn, his position looked hopeless. He went to the bathroom and cried. But then he washed his face, steeled himself, and went back to the board. He was trapped in a dark jungle, but then he saw a little light. He found a series of moves far beyond his years and managed to draw the game, winning the national title on tiebreaks. He had learned perhaps the most important lesson of all for a competitor: how to thrive under adversity. His style became to make the game complex, to dive into the chaos, confident that he could navigate it better than his opponents. He was unhindered by internal conflict. His style on the board was a direct expression of his personality. This is a state of being that is fundamental to the learning process. But as we get older, it becomes harder to maintain. As Josh entered his teens, his world became far more complicated. In 1993, the movie Searching for Bobby Fischer was released, and suddenly, he was famous. He couldn't go to a tournament without being swarmed by fans and reporters. Instead of losing himself in the game, He caught himself thinking about how he looked, thinking. The fame, which sounds like a dream for a teenager, was professionally a nightmare. He began to dread chess. At the same time, his new coach, a famous Russian grandmaster, urged him to change his style. Josh was a creative, attacking player, but his coach wanted him to play like the former world champion Anatoly Karpov, a cautious, strategic player who slowly squeezed the life out of his opponents like an anaconda. Josh tried to follow his coach's advice, asking himself, what would Karpov do here? But Karpov had cold blood, and Josh's boiled. Chess began to feel alien. He was losing his natural voice. Imagine a balance beam. As a child, you can run and do flips on it without fear. The beam feels wide. If you fall off, you just get back on. But as you get older, you become aware of the risks. The beam gets narrower. It becomes a tightrope over a crater of fire. What was once playful becomes a source of high stress. Josh was teetering on that tightrope. He had lost his center of gravity. His mom, Bonnie, trains horses. She explains that there are two ways to break a wild stallion. One way is shock and awe. You tie it up, scare it, drive it crazy until it submits out of sheer exhaustion and terror. You break its spirit. The other way is the way of the horse whisperers. You gentle the horse. You pet it, groom it, speak its language. You don't oppose it, you approach it indirectly. You synchronize your desires, so the horse wants to do what you want it to do. You guide it, without breaking its gorgeous, vibrant spirit. Josh's old coach, Bruce, was a horse whisperer. His new coach was trying to break him like a stallion. This approach, of forcing a student into a mold that violates their natural disposition, is incredibly destructive. Lost and alienated from the art he once loved, Josh stumbled upon a little book that would change his life, the Tao Te Ching. He was drawn to its wisdom about inner tranquility and releasing obstructions to our natural insight. This led him, in 1998, to walk into a Tai Chi studio in downtown Manhattan. And here, his second art began. In the Tai Chi studio, he was a beginner again. No cameras, no fans, no pressure. It was liberating. He was learning an art where the goal wasn't winning, but simply being. His teacher, Grandmaster William C. Chen, was like a physical Yoda. He could look at Josh from across the room, see a tiny knot of tension in his shoulder, mimic his posture, make a half-inch adjustment, and suddenly Josh would feel a soothing energy flow through his hand. After months of learning the slow, meditative movements, Master Chen invited him to join the push hands class, the martial side of the art. This is where the core philosophy of Tai Chi is tested, to defeat 1,000 pounds with 4 ounces. It's about blending with an opponent's energy, not clashing with it. But there's a problem. Our natural instinct is to tense up and resist incoming force. To learn Tai Chi, you have to unlearn this instinct. You have to allow yourself to be pushed around. A big, strong guy who walks into a martial arts studio wants to prove he's a big, strong guy. He resists, he pushes back. The problem is, he isn't learning anything. To grow, he needs to give up his current mindset. He needs to lose to win. Josh calls this principle investment in loss. It means giving yourself completely to the learning process, even if it means looking bad. For Josh, this was perfect. He was wide open to being tossed around. It was humility training. His training partner was a man named Evan, a 200-pound powerhouse and black belt in 2 other martial arts who liked to put people on the ground. For months, Evan hammered him, plastering him against the wall 50 times a night. It was brutal. Josh would limp home, bruised and battered. But a curious thing happened. As he got used to the impact, he stopped fearing it. As he learned to relax under fire, Evan seemed to slow down in his mind. He began to sense the attacks before they started. He learned to read Evan's intention. One day, the tables turned. Evan came at him like a bull, and Josh instinctively avoided the attack and threw him on the floor. It felt easy. After a few minutes of this, Evan made an excuse and never worked with him again. Evan was unwilling to invest in loss himself. He could have used Josh's improvement as a chance to raise his own game, but instead, he opted out. This brings us to another of Josh's core principles: making smaller circles. Think of the writer's block student from Robert Persic's Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. She can't write a 500-word essay on her town. Her teacher changes the assignment: write about the upper left-hand brick of the opera house across the street. Suddenly, a torrent of creativity is unleashed. The principle is depth over breadth. Plunge into the mystery of the micro to understand the macro. Instead of learning 100 fancy, superficial techniques, Josh focused on refining one simple movement, like pushing his hand 6 inches through the air, for hours. He was feeling the subtlest ripples of tension and releasing them, one by one. Once he mastered the feeling of a perfectly executed small movement, he could translate that feeling to the entire art form. He was touching the essence of a technique. Then, he would incrementally condense the external movement while keeping the internal essence. Over time, the movement gets smaller and smaller, but its potency increases. A big wound-up punch becomes a 1-inch punch with knockout power. He was making smaller circles. As he went deeper, he began to realize that the two arts he was studying, chess and Tai Chi, were not so different after all. They were linked by an essential connecting ground. He started winning chess games without thinking about chess. He was feeling flow, filling space, riding waves, like in martial arts. In a martial arts competition, time would slow down, allowing him to methodically take apart his opponent's structure, just like in a chess game. What he was best at wasn't chess or Tai Chi. What he was best at was the art of learning. This leads to the question of peak performance. How do we get in the zone? And more importantly, how do we stay there? Josh describes what sports psychologists call the soft zone. Imagine you're concentrating intently. If you're tense, straining to fight off distraction, you're in a hard zone. You're like a dry twig, ready to snap under pressure. The alternative is to be quietly, intensely focused, relaxed on the outside but with all your mental juices churning inside. You flow with whatever comes, integrating every ripple of life into your creative moment. This is the soft zone. You're like a flexible blade of grass that can survive a hurricane. He learned this lesson as a young chess player when catchy songs would get stuck in his head during tournaments. At first, he tried to block them out, which only made them louder. Then he had a breakthrough. He started to think to the beat of the music. His chess calculations moved to the rhythm of the song, and he played an inspired game. He had learned to flow with the distraction. But the next level is to use the distraction to turn adversity into an advantage. In 2001, he was in the finals of a martial arts tournament, fighting a 230-pound giant. The man was a mean, accomplished fighter who wanted to tear him apart. In the middle of the match, the man ripped into Josh's shoulder. He heard a crack. His hand went icy hot. It was broken. The pain jolted him into a deeper focus. Time slowed to a near stop. He fought the rest of the match with one arm, his mind in a state of heightened awareness he had never experienced before. He won. Just like the earthquake in India that spurred him to a chess revelation, the broken hand had become fuel for high performance. The doctor told him there was no chance he could compete in the national championship 7 weeks later. But Josh was resolved. He was back in training the day after he got his cast on. He was forced to train one-handed. This disadvantage became an incredible learning opportunity. He had to cultivate his weaker side, developing skills he never would have otherwise. He discovered new principles of leverage and control. His weakness blossomed into a weapon. 7 weeks later, he won the nationals. The greatest competitors don't see injuries as setbacks. They see them as opportunities to reinvent themselves, to sharpen other parts of their game. They learn to use adversity. This all builds to a crescendo. How to trigger this peak state at will. Josh explains that you can't just find a trigger, like a magical song that puts you in the zone. You have to create it. The method is to work backward. First, identify an activity in your life where you feel completely present and serene. For one man Josh coached, it was playing catch with his son. Then, create a consistent routine that you perform every single time before that activity. For this man, it was a light snack, 15 minutes of meditation, 10 minutes of stretching, and listening to a Bob Dylan song. After doing this for a month, a physiological connection is formed between the routine and the state of mind. He could then use that routine before a big business meeting and feel the same serene focus he felt when playing catch with his son. The final step is to condense the routine. Incrementally, you shorten it. The 15 minutes of meditation become 5. The 10-minute song becomes 30 seconds. Eventually, just taking a single deep breath or thinking of the first note of the song can trigger the entire state. You've created an instant, portable trigger for the zone. For Josh, his trigger became the slow, meditative movements of the Tai Chi form. He condensed it down to a single breath, a single internal movement, that could instantly click him into his peak state. Which brings us back to Taiwan. 2004. He had spent 2 years preparing for this moment, training with his best friend Dan, who was built just like the Taiwanese champion, Buffalo. They had gone to war every night, breaking down every technique, every psychological tell, building an anti-Buffalo game plan. The finals were brutal. In the first event, Fixed Step, a tight, explosive game, Josh got into Buffalo's head, winning the first world title. The stadium went silent. But the second event, Moving Step, was Buffalo's legacy. It was a wild, physical melee. In the first round, Josh's shoulder was badly injured by an illegal throw. He was in excruciating pain. He lay on his back, fighting to breathe, his teammates looking on in horror. He got up. The second round was chaos. Spinning, cranking, bodies flying. With 1 second left, Josh drove Buffalo out of the ring with a throw so violent he dislocated his own shoulder again, smashing his head into the ground. The round was a tie. The final round. He was exhausted, running on empty. Buffalo's coach, seeing Josh was injured, told his fighter to stall, to run out the clock. But Josh found one last opening, one last ounce of will, and threw Buffalo to the mat to tie the match at the very last second. Then, chaos. The judges had let the clock run long in the second round. A protest was filed. After a long delay, the officials ruled it a shared championship. In a flash, it was over. He had survived. He had won a world championship and shared another, on foreign soil, against a legend, with one arm. He hadn't just learned to perform. He had learned to turn pain into focus, chaos into clarity, and adversity into victory. He had mastered the art of learning. Commentary. When you close this book, what sticks with you isn't a collection of tips and tricks. It's a feeling. It's the profound sense that the barriers we see between different skills, and even between different parts of our own lives, are illusions. The same principles that make a great chess player are the same principles that make a great martial artist, a great musician, or a great scientist. The most powerful idea, for me, is this concept of investment in loss. In a world that is so focused on immediate results, on looking good, on never failing, Waitzkin reminds us that true growth happens when we are willing to be vulnerable. It happens when we step into the ring with our Evan, the challenge that we know will beat us up, and we say, "Teach me." It's the courage to be a beginner, again and again, even when we are already good at something. It's understanding that every loss, every mistake, is not a mark against us, but a lesson lighting our path forward. The second key takeaway is the shift from a goal-oriented mindset to a process-oriented one. So many of us are like those young chess players memorizing openings. We want the shortcut, the quick win. But Waitzkin's journey shows that lasting excellence comes from falling in love with the process itself. It comes from finding joy not just in the victory, but in the practice, the struggle, the slow, incremental climb. When you focus on the process, the results take care of themselves. More than that, you build a foundation that can weather any storm, because your self-worth isn't tied to a single outcome. So, how can you apply this to your own life, starting today? First, find your endgame. Whatever you're trying to learn, a new language, an instrument, a skill for your future career, start with the simplest, most fundamental component. Like Josh with his king and pawn endings, ignore the fancy stuff for now. Go deep on one small thing. Master it. Feel what excellence feels like on a micro level. That feeling will become your guide as you expand your skills. Second, embrace a loss. This week, deliberately seek out a challenge you know you're not ready for. It could be playing a sport against someone better than you, trying a math problem that's 2 chapters ahead, or speaking a new language with a native speaker even if you know you'll stumble. Don't do it to win. Do it to learn. Pay attention to the feeling of being pushed, of making mistakes. Welcome it. That discomfort is the feeling of growth. The Art of Learning is more than a book about chess or martial arts. It's a guide to living a richer, more engaged life. It teaches us that the path to mastery is not about accumulating knowledge, but about deepening our awareness of ourselves, of our craft, and of the world around us. It's about learning to be present, to be resilient, and to find the hidden harmony in the chaos of the struggle. That was a summary of The Art of Learning by Josh Waitzkin. We've certainly touched on the big ideas today, but a summary is like looking at a photograph of a beautiful landscape. It can show you the scenery, but it can't make you feel the wind on your face or the sun on your skin. The real magic of this book is in the stories, in the quiet moments of reflection that make these principles come alive. This overview is your map, but if anything we discussed today sparked something in you, I encourage you to take the journey yourself. Reading the book is an experience, and it's one that might just change the way you approach every challenge for the rest of your life. The link to the book is in the description below. Also, if you found this summary valuable and it gave you something to think about, please show some support by hitting that like button and subscribing to the channel. That way, you won't miss our next deep dive into another life-changing book. Let's keep learning and growing together.